everybody, welcome back to The Hobby Musician. You're joining us today as we work through a mini-series of the most ambitious project we've ever undertaken here at the channel. We are currently building 2 guitars completely from scratch. We're using normal hand tools and we're using entirely salvaged or scavenged wood. Now don't worry, if you're brand new and you're just joining us for the first time today, make sure you click the link at the top because that'll open up a playlist where I have arranged every single episode of this entire build in order, so you could jump all the way back and catch up from the beginning, or you could jump around to the different phases of the build and maybe find the episode that most closely matches whatever project you're working on. Today's episode is all about pickups, but before we get into it, I want to make 2 notes. Just like we do with all of our videos, if you see us talking about items or tools or processes here on the channel, I've made sure to include some affiliate links to all of the items and the gear that we use right below the video, down in the description and in the comments section, so that if you want to build along with us or try out some of this stuff for yourself, you can click right into them and get the exact things you see me using here. The second note is kind of more about the episode itself. Today I'm going to talk through some of the specifics about what I chose to do with the pickups for this particular build. But if you're brand new to building your own pickups from scratch, and if you want really in-depth, step-by-step instructions, we've done a mini-series before here on the channel all about custom building our pickups. We're going to use the same method today, but if you want to see expanded videos that take you through every single detailed step, that's going to be your best bet. And you're going to see throughout this episode, I'm going to keep putting links. They'll be popping up in the top corner. When we briefly mention a process here, the episode with the full expanded steps are going to pop up in the corner. So feel free to pause, check those out if you want to get into building your own pickups too. Okay, without further ado, what did we do for pickups for this bass build? Well, back early on in the mini-series when we were talking about the designs and we made our templates for how the basses were going to look, one of the aspects that I kept in mind was cosmetically, what did I want the front of the basses to look like? And in particular, one of those details is pickups. I kind of had in my mind an idea, once I had the shapes and the curves, everything, I kind of figured out where I wanted visually to see those pickups. Now, one of the best things, in my opinion, about learning how and ultimately building your own pickups is that it allows you complete creative control over the exact size, shape, look, and feel of the pickups that end up in your instrument. Now, if I were to just go online and pull up a pickup that was available by some company, I would be limited and locked into the exact size and shape of those pickups. I'd have to kind of alter my design ideas to make those pickups work. So the first thing I did was I plotted out where I wanted the pickups, the exact dimensions and exact placement, and then I jumped over to our 3D software. So you can see here, this is an image of ultimately after I built all the parts in 3 dimensions, I started out just by taking the exact width and length and height of what I wanted. Based on what I measured out on my templates, I came in here and you can see 4 parts in this build. The first one we'll just talk about is the big rectangular block that you see. Now that, at the end of this, you, me, the audience, anyone who looks at these instruments is just gonna see the outer casing. This is the shell. It's hollow on the back, and I modeled in some indents for the screw holes to go where we screw this down into the bass. But that is just a casing. All of the workings are going to be coming from the other pieces. Now, 2 other pieces you see in this image kind of look like slices of Swiss cheese. Those are what I call my bobbins. There's a top bobbin and a bottom bobbin, and you can see the series of holes that goes across the middle. Now, my particular design is that I want to have 2 Alnico magnet rods. I use Alnico 5 magnetic rods in my pickup builds. And those, I want a rod to go on either side of every string. So when you pluck a string, it's going to vibrate in between 2 rods. And you can see running along the middle of that bobbin are spaced out holes. Now you can also see in the second bobbin, I have the same series of holes because they're going to end up making a sandwich. Now, I'll switch images over here, and you can see that once these are printed out, the magnets, I push the magnets through and I make sure that they're flush on one end and flush on the other end, and that's kind of what I'm calling this sandwich. Those bobbins provide the structural support to hold all the magnets in place, and I put a little dab of super glue on the top and a little dab of super glue on the bottom to get that sandwich to be nice and sturdy. So now coming back to the 3D image, the last part is also just kind of a cosmetic thing. It's the bottom thin rectangle. So we said at the end of the day, everything's going to get shoved into this housing. Well, I need something to cover up the bottom. So I made a very thin rectangle of the same dimensions, also making sure to line up the screw holes that will continue from the top part to go all the way through when everything is sealed up, glued, and taped shut. But the interesting thing here is I put a little half moon shape, a little cutout in the bottom, because we're going to have to connect up wires to our pickup, and I need those wires to have a space to run out of this housing so that I can run it in and wire it into all the pots and the controls. That is essentially what I had to do with the 3D software. Now sure, we're building a 5-string version and a 4-string, so I took this same design and I copied it into a new file and adjusted it down to the 4 strings. So then these files are ready to send to the printer, and those 4 pieces are basically what I print out. They make like a nice plastic housing. It's kind of a plastic blend with a little bit of carbon fiber in there, but they're very sturdy and very easy to use, once you have them printed out. Well, the next part of this is after you get your sandwich made, you need to wind your copper wire. Now that's where we're going to look over here. I have my trusty hand crank winding machine. Now if you're out there and you're asking yourself, okay, hand crank, well, there's a couple reasons that I recommend maybe starting with something like this. I never knew at the outset if I was really going to like making pickups or if I was going to do this long term. A hand crank machine like this, and as you'll see in the affiliate links down below, these are really affordable. You can pick up one of these and try your hand at some pickups to see if you like it. Now, if you really do, there are far more expensive, far more motorized and mechanized winding machines that you can get your hands on later, but this is a really good entry point for all of us DIYers out there. All right, well, how do we wind it? Basically, you can see here, I would just stick my sandwich. Once I had my magnet, my bobbin sandwich, I would stick it on here, attach the copper wire to the first of our little eyelets, and then you can see in this time lapse, it's time to wind. Well, there are all sorts of different recipes, if you will, out there for how many winds it takes to get this sound or that sound. But in a nutshell, I will tell you this. I tend to shoot for about 7,000 to 8,000 winds. Now, there's a counter on the front of this, so as I'm winding, you can see that I'm checking every now and then to see, it just counts how many winds you do. And the 7,000 range I've found is kind of a thinner, trebly, it sounds pretty good for a bridge pickup, but then if you put another 1,000-ish, maybe a little over 8,000 winds total, 7,000, 8,000, that extra 1,000, the more winds you tend to put on a pickup, the more it can kind of warm up this sound. And I've found that I really like those for the more of the neck pickups. So that's what I did for my pickups. I made a goal of a 7,000, a little over 7,000, a little over 8,000 for both of them. And after all of that is said and done, here is what I can show you. So here is our bobbin sandwich, and you can see in between there, we've got all of the wires, the copper wire, and down here at the bottom, you can see the 2 eyelets, and that's where beginning the wind, I wound up the copper wire into one eyelet, did the thousands of winds, and then wound up the other end into the second eyelet, and that's where you run your wires. You get a signal wire and a ground wire coming out of your pickups on either end of the copper coil. So at this point, it's fair to say this is a completed pickup. You can put this, I could slide this into the housing, close it up, wire it in, and it is usable. However, for me personally, and something I recommend for everybody out there, I tend to do one final step. I am going to wax pot these pickups. Now you'll see here, and I'll put the time lapse up as we talk about it, but wax potting is a technique that provides some, I would guess, some polish to this whole project. And by polish, I mean it kind of elevates. Wax potting provides two added characteristics to your pickups. When you melt the correct mixture of wax, and we're talking about a 20% beeswax, 80% paraffin wax, at the right temperature, about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, that mixture, that liquid mixture of wax, when you dip your pickups in it, it will, because it's a liquid, it will seep into all of the nooks and crannies of this very fine, delicate copper wire, including the big middle gap that's wound up inside this coil. Now, as a liquid, it seeps in there, but then when you pull it out and that liquid is trapped and it hardens, it, first of all, provides physical stability. It actually provides a foundation so that that delicate wire is kind of protected. It doesn't jostle around as much. But the second thing that wax potting provides is that wax itself is non-conductive. So we're talking about magnets and wire and electric signal. Wax potting provides some insulation, electric insulation, meaning it's going to help reduce unwanted noise and hiss and hum that might otherwise get into pickups, that you might find in other kinds of pickups. So that is why I always wax pot my pickups before I install and get them into my builds. Well, everybody, there you have it. Those are the specifics for how we approached pickups for this particular build. And like I said, feel free, rewind this video, click any of those episodes to find out more expanded steps and to even get this to a point where you might want to try it yourself. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of this. And as always, until next time, play on, my friends. Play on.